Earthdawn Survival Guide, a podcast for all disciplines, paths, players, and game masters, and the questers that we are, Josh and myself. I am Dan.
I'm Josh.
And on today's episode, we will be discussing all things pyrogastrical, because we're going to talk about the fire eaters.
I should not have been about to take a drink of water.
No.
Fortunately, I did not snarf all over my keyboard.
I timed that exactly right for when Josh had the bottle to his lips. But no, we're going to talk about the path in the Adept's Journey, Mystic Paths, the Fire Eater, the wonderful essay written by your friend and mine, Opti, from
Opti.
Yes,
from the Opti of the Legends of Earthdawn actual play podcast, Opti of Fraggin Unicorn Games.
There you go.
Who is producers of the, I'm sure, fantastically awesome tabletop game Gangs of the Undercity, which is a tabletop miniatures game that I backed on Kickstarter.
There you go.
Have not had a chance to play it yet. I may not get a chance to play it until Gen Con, where I am signed up for the Learn to Play Gangs of the Undercity session. Fraggin Unicorn Games is also the publisher behind Misspent Youth, which is a great little indie game about fighting against the man.
We are just so spreading the love here right now.
Yeah, no, Opti is fantastic. I love Opti. Opti is
good people.
Yes. Yes. Not only did Opti write the essay for the Fire Eater, Opti wrote the essay for the Fire Eater as Scratch, as his character.
Yeah.
From the Legends of Earthdawn podcast. So Scratch.
Because why wouldn't you? I would have.
Well, yeah, why wouldn't you? Scratch is awesome. So Scratch is now, in a sense, canonical to Earthdawn.
Yes. Rightfully so.
Rightfully so.
If Scratch doesn't have a place in your heart, get a new heart.
I love Opti. Opti is such good people. I do not get, obviously, he lives in Texas.
Don't get around to him too much.
I mean, I talked to him 2 nights ago. We played Earthdawn together a couple nights ago.
Yeah.
For the Legends game. We're still playing. I know it's been a while since episodes of that have been released, but Cliff has been having issues in terms of getting stuff polished and edited and released, like so many creatives this past year and change. Just getting by the day-to-day sometimes can be too much. And when you have something like the Legends podcast that is done as a labor of love on the side and not bringing in any income, when you only have so much energy, you need to devote that energy first to the stuff that pays your bills.
Yeah, a little bit. My offer still stands. Cliff, if you need help editing, send some files my way. I can put them together.
I mean, we would probably still be playing even if we weren't doing the podcast at this point. We've been playing for a couple of years, and we all have a good time, like hanging out together, once or twice a month.
That's the point of playing.
Sharing the stories of these, this gang of misfits and ne'er-do-wells. Actually, no, not ne'er-do-wells. Scratch would have a very, very hard time if I described us as a group of ne'er-do-wells.
You are clear do-wells.
Maybe needles.
Anyway, so there is that. No, in rereading The Fire Eater's Path, I think it is a fantastic resurgence of a truly unique orc-only discipline. Or path. Sorry, not discipline, path. I'm only saddened that it only has 5 ranks to it, but we'll get to that in a bit or so. However, I think there are 5 pretty darn nice ranks, and of course we'll get to the talent and axe as we get there. But this is, since I did some Spirethiel on the Woodsman elf path, we get to speak some Orzet today as well. So this is the Fire Eater, or the Splak Chojoto, right out of the essay. And Gahad is the well-known passion that orcs have when their will is being thwarted, essentially. And that's where this whole thing comes from, is orcs have this one thing that everybody knows in Earthdawn is their Gahad. If you get their Gahad up, you better watch out. And I've made my previous players list out 2 triggers for their Gahad. And it was fun having almost all orc party by accident, eventually, working in a number of people. And so each one had their own little triggers for Gahad. And oddly enough, I could get almost all of them triggered at the right time with the right NPC. But one of those things. But when fire eaters get together. They speak about each other as the splach-cha, fire stomach. So if they're a fire eater and adjusting to their fire eater, the title is therefore the splach-cha. So one of those things.
So the fire eater is fully original.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about with the previous couple of entries how the Brother of Stone was kind of derived from one aspect of the Purifier, which was the old obsidimen racial discipline.
Yes.
We talked about the Woodsman, which was originally the elf racial discipline, and how that was shifted and changed to reflect elves within 4th edition and the ongoing dialogue with regards to the future of the elven people. The Fire Eater is not derived in any way from a previous edition's path or discipline.
No, this is made from a whole cloth for 4th edition.
Because I mentioned when we talked about the Woodsman in particular that there didn't seem to be anything that was particularly elfy about the Woodsman, except for the fact that, elves are them and they deal with the woods, which is a kind of elfy thing, but there wasn't any power or ability or anything that they had that was particularly unique or uniquely elf. The Fire Eater is uniquely orc because it revolves around and focuses on the orcish trait of Gahad, that fire in the gut of an orc that drives them to great action. And it's just really, really cool to have developed a path that revolves around Gahad and stokes and nurtures and releases that and expands its ability for people who want to explore that aspect of being an orc.
Yeah, because it's more of an internal feeling, and it's not really ever had any kind of game mechanics really solid around it, other than maybe roll a willpower test, per se, against a...
Yeah.
Maybe your Gahad's up, but this is, I think, a wonderful way to, as you said, further explore the Gahad aspect of orcs, because this is something only orcs get. And like I said, it's an internal mechanism of the orc character themselves. And so I love exploring those types of things. And because it's based on orcs, it's a little bit less structured on how to get into becoming a fire eater or how you were introduced to other fire eaters. If one finds you and they ask you, how you handle your Gahad and so forth, so on, they might do a small little questionnaire with you, have a drink, so forth and so on, and talk to you a little bit. But otherwise, if you have this burning thing inside you, you don't quite know how to handle it, you don't quite, you want to explore it further, you have this pull towards a faraway land. I'm kidding. You have this unnatural kind of innate sense that you need to go search out someone else who has this, and you can go find them. And so when you find the other fire eater, that's kind of their call to, well, okay, you want to come join the Brotherhood of Fire Eaters, the other splachas, let's get you involved in that. So there's two different ways you can introduce that to the campaign. You as the game master can have the NPC, Fire Eater, approach the players, or you can just suggest to the players, maybe if they keep getting their Gahad up a little bit, they could start wandering around or find themselves heading in a different direction than the rest of the party because they need to go explore this aspect of something calling to them about their Gahad.
Yeah, there is an exploration in a sense of being an orc and what it means to be an orc that's part of the Fire Eater ethos, although it is a lot less formally structured than the Woodsman is. The Woodsman, as befits an elven path, is very kind of structured and ritualized and formalized, whereas the Fire Eaters are a lot more open in the sense that there's not a formal structure so much of, there are so many and we meet at certain times of the year and make our decisions then. Any orc who really feels that fire within them and is interested in nurturing and pursuing and exploring that is welcome to become a Fire Eater. In the fiction, it is seeing a resurgence in part because of the rebirth and growth of Cara Fahd, the Orc Nation, but it is not something that is, say, a political faction within the Orc Nation. Although there are members of the path that may want to see themselves be more involved in that, with the orc nation sort of being a further expression of orc nature.
Yeah.
But it's largely similar to how you might see support groups or communities that will develop around different aspects of things. Like you will have, say, a community that develops and grows up around a role-playing game, or around a shared medical condition, or a shared background or orientation, or any number of other things. That's kind of what the Fire Eaters are, is that they are a community that is sort of developed around this greater sense of Gahad that some orcs have, and have wrestled magic into helping shape and deal with that trait.
Yeah. So naturally, there are some disciplines that are probably more suited to align themselves along this path because they're more aggressive and more direct. But really, I mean, any discipline can give it a shot. Go for it. But again, purely orcs only, because based upon the path only knack that you get for being a fire eater, one of the requirements is that you have to be an orc. Period. Full stop. There you are. But the disciplines that are probably best suited for this, or at least would be the more interested in this, Cavalryman, Sky Raider, Warrior, Elementalists for the non-physical, and or Troubadours, because of course, Scratch, but there you are. But really, anybody, like I said, can give it a try to go along there. Fire Eaters aren't necessarily going to ostracize you or limit you to say you probably shouldn't be a quester first, or questers have this natural antithesis toward being a fire eater as well. But sometimes they find it might dilute the efforts and focus of being a fire eater if you're a quester, or dilute the focus of the quester if you're going to try and be a fire eater. So it's probably not best served if you're trying to do both.
Going back to the idea of paths and disciplines and questors all being expressions of how an individual devotes themselves philosophically to an idea, and how that allows them in one manner or another to unlock magic and powers within themselves. Although in the case of questors, that is an ability that is sort of granted to them from outside in their devotion to these semi-divine beings, the passions.
Yeah.
But that if you have conflicting philosophies, if you're trying to pull yourself in too many directions by having too many competing philosophies, it could be that reduces your ability to actually tap into the power at all. And so the idea of paths is something that enhances or already plays into your existing philosophy as an adept in one way or another. So a warrior would have a particular philosophy in how they pursue their discipline that allows them to unlock their magic. An orc warrior would do that in an orc way, typically. Yeah. Right? It's not necessarily required, but the nature of being an orc, depending on their background and so forth, will express itself through their warrior discipline. Adding Fire Eater on top of that is basically taking the orc aspects of that and cranking the knob up.
Yeah.
In the way that any discipline or any orc, all orcs, at least in theory, have this sort of Gahad, this inner fire. Mm-hmm. The Fire Eater path is just taking that aspect of things and amping it up.
Exactly. Because the Fire Eaters take that unbridled passion and energy that Gahad produces, and it kind of focuses it to a harnessed effectiveness, if I can put that in my phrase, and focus is where power comes from. So it's taking that kind of unchanneled energy that Gahad is, where they just need to do something about it, and I can't say tamps it down, but like I said, concentrates it, focuses it, and almost aims it in a certain direction for that orc to use that fire, that Gahad, and do something with it.
Yes.
So
rather than seeing the Gahad as something that needs to be fought against, it is something to be embraced and celebrated and turned towards positive expression.
It's not quite. I'm going to make a really bad analogy. It's no longer like, oh, the Hulk is loose. Oh crap! It's no, hey, Hulk, go smash. You can direct that. You can direct that finally, and put it in the right area that you want it to go to. So again, it's a little bit faster and looser than the Elf Council with the Woodsman. This is roughly half a dozen orcs or so, rudimentary semi-council of just the wisest, most accomplished fire eaters of whatever age they happen to be there and whatever they determine wisest by. And that kind of does the, okay, you'll do. We find we can work with you. We can teach you. You are the right student for this. We can get you initiated. Let's go.
Yep.
So a little faster, a little looser, because sometimes you wield Gahad and other times the Gahad wields you. So the lesson in what the fire eaters are going to teach you is sometimes you need to direct yourself and use the Gahad as fuel and purpose, and sometimes just turn yourself over to the Gahad and it'll take care of everything in your path that you want to get taken care of. And that is just fuel for what you're going for. Sorry, there's one more path we should talk about that is not going to go along well with the Fire Eater, and that is the Horror Stalkers yet again.
Yeah. I kind of want to say multiple paths is not
a good idea.
Probably not a thing. I mean, I'm sure it's possible, but it's one of those should be a really rare kind of thing. And horror stalkers are just their own beast.
Yeah.
They have their own.
Yeah, it's mechanically possible. Is it possible philosophically, or is it possible for the setting of the game? Yeah, I think that's kind of stretching things a little thin it's not game breaking, but I think it's just stretching yourself a little thin on are you just trying to buff yourself out and get as many things as possible? Or do you have a philosophical bent to your character that you are trying to follow? So that's just me. Anyway, yes, to join when you are finally around the other fire eaters of at least rank 5, which is the maximum, they will give you an ordeal in which you have to give into your Gahad in a spectacular fashion. And I do mean that with the root word, make a spectacle for people to be viewing you, because it involves traveling to an unfamiliar locale and usually is an indulgence done in public. So it has to be, to use Scratch's phrase, glorious.
Yes.
all glory to Gahad in this case. And the last part of the ordeal is you have to give into your Gahad in full. You don't get to pull your punches. You don't get to mince your words. It's just let it all hang out in every orc way possible.
Yeah, but at the same time, while giving into your Gahad, you also need to demonstrate a certain amount of appropriate restraint of its use. That is, that you are turning it towards an appropriate purpose or goal, and not just
berserker rage.
Wantonly going around indulging without any particular end in target.
No, there has to be a purpose for your Gahad, and you have to release and resolve that purpose. It's not just, I get to act like a drunken idiot. That's not the case. There has to be a point to it, has to be a resolution of it, but you have to give into yourself and that passion fully as the player character to do so. So, let's say you got that done. You went to a distant land where people don't actually know you, probably far away from your legend. You got your ordeal to go through. It happened, your Gahad was raised. You did what you did. You're done, time to come home. So you qualify now. The initiation is actually a modified Spita slapping game.
Yeah, this is an orc thing.
It's totally an orc thing.
It's totally an orc thing where orcs intentionally try to provoke each other's Gahad by physically slapping each other. Like, if you've seen the thing online with the professional slapping contest,
yes,
where people will really wield back and
roundhouse slap,
like roundhouse slap. And the idea is to take that and stand up for it and to let it fuel your Gahad, but not to not to give into it.
Yes.
There's also probably some aspects of insults, because insult contests are very popular among orcs to try and provoke each other's Gahads.
Yes.
That's an aspect of sort of the nomadic orc culture.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some aspects of that as well. There is a very strong embracing within the Fire Eater of the quote unquote traditional orc culture, being of the nomads and the riders and whatnot, as opposed to the city orcs who are more perhaps aligned with Throlic and more sort of settled Barsavian cultural traditions.
So in the modified version of the initiation, they are the people who are slapping the initiate, your player character, are trying just to get to the edge of triggering that Gahad, but not go over the edge. So I would find this to be, aside from the actual slapping part, which would not take place in real life, a fantastic role-playing, ROLE playing session where the other players around the table perhaps might play the wizened orcs, trying to insult and trying not to actually raise that Gahad of the initiate, and the other role-playing aspect for the initiate to sit there and, I can't say take it, but let everybody know at this point you've almost crossed the line. Yes, you've done a good job. You've not crossed the line, so forth and so on. So I would think this would be a fantastic role-playing session for all of this to take place in.
Yeah, potentially.
Not just dice rolling, and okay, mechanics are done, here's your next step, go on and go from there. No, this, along with the Brother of Stone, the Woodsman in this, all have these wonderful initiations that are almost diceless and are based upon really good character interaction and role playing.
Yeah, that's something that was really kind of brought forward and developed very nicely with the paths in terms of their writing and background and so forth. One of the ideas behind the talent option, the sort of 3rd and 4th edition discipline progression paradigm, is that there's a bit more flexibility for you to come up with your own style of warrior or weaponsmith or swordmaster, where there are some very kind of strong similarities between adepts that follow the same discipline, but the options allow a little bit more customization and a little bit more freedom from a character philosophy standpoint to make the type of character that they want. Whereas the paths are a much more defined and focused philosophical and role-playing aspect. A Fire Eater is going to be exploring and pursuing things relating around their Gahad. In a similar kind of way that the Woodsman kind of interacts in some ways with what it means to be an elf for the defense of elven culture and elven settlements within woodlands and forests, whether that person is actually an elf or not. You've got a lot more focus in the paths in 4th edition, kind of similar to the focus that you might see in the essays in the Adept's Way from 1st edition.
Yeah.
Which can be taken by some people as, oh, this is the only way to play this discipline, when that wasn't the original intention and something that we've avoided nailing down quite so much in 4th. But the paths really do kind of embrace that role-playing and philosophy and character development aspect, in addition to providing you with some cool new mechanical toys to play with.
Yeah. The last 2 terms everybody should know when dealing with Gahad is that the beginnings of Gahad are actually called agria, which is the facial twitch. That's kind of a warning sign you might have triggered an orc's Gahad. Just one of those things. Josh occasionally gives me that twitch when we're talking about certain things on the podcast. I occasionally see it in Josh. I occasionally do. Not often. But Josh is disagreeing. And then otherwise, your rank 5 Fire Eaters, the cream of the crop, are the Drothcha, the preservers of fire. So, a couple little terms there. Got to work in some Orzet for my orc friends. They can listen in on those things as well. So, how about we get down to the meat and potatoes of this and talk about the Other things you get as you become a fire eater, once you pass the initiation and do the Shpita slapping game there, you get to add things onto your karma ritual. Mm-hmm. And the karma ritual does things nicely as well. They begin to actually add little elements of fire and flame to your overall persona as you go throughout your day.
Yeah, the idea of Gahad being a sort of fire in the belly that fuels an orc's passions.
Yeah.
There's a lot of sort of theming relating to fire and flame and heat that goes into Fire Eater stuff. The karma ritual, the modifications to the Adept's karma ritual that will come about as a result of starting on the path of the Fire Eater will kind of incorporate some of those low-grade pyrotechnics, little bits of flame, but it will also involve more expressive and explosive displays of emotion or passion. Mm-hmm. If there is not necessarily so much of an appropriate expression of actual fire, you would still see that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The way that if you've got the sort of traditional Sky Raider shield beating ritual, there will be aspects of that perhaps the sweat that they exude upon, as that progresses will be sort of hot and maybe even steam off of their body.
Yeah.
The various things like that it doesn't completely change necessarily the Adept's existing karma ritual, but that there are aspects of that get expressed and personalized based on the Adept's journey on this new mystic tradition that they are a part of.
Very nice. The half magic ability, of course, all of these kind of run along with you get to use your half magic to find other fire eaters and know the history thereof, just like the Woodsman, just like the Brother of Stone. Mm-hmm. This perception-based half magic ability also works against an orc's social defense to learn about that orc's Gahad.
Yes.
So that's a new thing.
It does require 3 successes to actually learn what the Gahad is.
Yep.
You can use Fire Eater half magic as insight into an orc's relationship to their Gahad or what might be going on with them as far as a Gahad kind of thing goes.
So if it's going to be an NPC, make sure you have that NPC's orc Gahad figured out ahead of time, because the Fire Eater will figure that out rather quickly. So the only drawback I find to the Fire Eater is that it's only 5 ranks. But that's all.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair,
yes,
there's really only one special thing. Like, there's no need to go overboard with the number of ranks and abilities for the Fire Eater. The Fire Eater gets one cool trick and a whole bunch of knacks.
That's what I was going to go with next. There's all that stuff right there. So they do get the Journeyman tier cost, maximum rank of 5 of the Fire Eater talent. And at ranks 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, you get a new talent, of course. But rank 2, you get a +1 to your social defense. And this does stack, as we have said before, with whatever your regular discipline has. Mm-hmm. And at rank 4, you get a + physical defense. Also stacks with whatever your discipline has. And so here are your talent options for your induction into Fire Eater. Battle Shout, Emotion Song, Fire Blood, which totally makes sense. First Impression, Heartening Laugh, Impressive Display, Lionheart, and the new one, Fires of Gahad.
Fires of Gahad. This is the one neat trick that Fire Eaters don't want you to know about.
Why would you not take this one?
Yeah, why would you not take this one? This is why you become a Fire Eater, really.
Yes.
This would be the main reason that you become a Fire Eater. So it is a talent that adds its rank to the orc's willpower for the purposes of trying to resist their Gahad being provoked. The flip side of that is that if they are giving in to their Gahad, they can make a Fires of Gahad test against a difficulty 10. Each success on that test increases the bonus that they get by indulging their Gahad by 1. Mm-hmm. It makes it easier for them to resist their Gahad when they don't want to give into it, and it makes the bonuses for when they do give into it even bigger.
Yeah.
That's the main thing that does.
Mm-hmm. That's the mechanical backup.
That's the mechanical
explanation.
Fun.
Yeah, mechanical explanation for how that's going to work. So, again, why would you not? So at rank 5, which is your final rank in Fire Eater, you only get one of two options. So weigh this carefully. If you don't already get these, weigh these carefully. You get Fire Heal or Resist Taunt. Now, thematically speaking, I think Resist Taunt might actually be the better one to go with, but that's me.
Yeah.
I would encourage.
Fire Heal is a great talent. It gives you additional recovery tests.
Yeah.
If you are not following a discipline that kind of gets access to that to begin with, combining that with Fireblood can be really, really nice in terms of your sustain.
Yeah.
You know, in a combat situation where you would be taking damage, you do your Fire Heal to get extra recovery tests, and those can then be spent to power Fireblood in combat. Playing with the themes of heat and fire and control, Resist Taunt is something that allows the adept to resist those abilities that would provoke them or cause them to lose control of themselves in some way.
Yeah.
And, Battle Shout and First Impression, there's a lot of kind of social and energetic and personality-driven stuff that goes along with that very, very nicely.
Yeah. So we've gotten all those things taken care of. We've covered all this in the first 30-odd minutes or so of the show. The thing we've done the last couple episodes that we're going to do again, Josh, what kind of knacks do they get?
There are two groups of knacks that Fire Eaters get access to. There are knacks for being a Fire Eater itself, so these are available to anybody who wants to pick them up that is following the Fire Eater path. At rank 1, they can pick up a knack that allows them to spend a karma point on any test to resist their Gahad, so making it even easier for them to do that.
Yeah.
At rank 2, they can spend a karma point on a Fires of Gahad test, which they can already, so this allows them to spend an additional karma point.
Yeah.
At rank 3, they can spend a karma point on tests to destroy the source of Gahad, which can be used up to Fire Eater rank times per round. So it allows them to really, like if they've got multiple attacks and so forth, really pour in that extra karma.
Yeah.
At rank 4, they can spend a karma point on an adjacent ally's test to destroy the source of Gahad. So basically feed karma to other people.
Ooh.
Rank 5, they can spend a karma on any action test while affected by Gahad. They can just spend, if they are affected, if they are giving into their Gahad, they can spend a karma point on anything, but only 1 point per round. But any test, any action test that they make, they can spend a point of karma. So those are the Fire Eater knacks. Those are available just for simply being a Fire Eater.
Yeah.
Then we've got the Fires of Gahad knacks. These are the knacks that are based off of the Fires of Gahad talent, that awesome talent that Fire Eaters get that allows them to even more completely control their Gahad.
Focus it.
There's Stoking the Flames, which allows them to get additional Gahad triggers for each rank in Fires of Gahad. The Adept gets a new Gahad trigger. Orcs normally get like 2 things that provoke them and one that never, like 2 things that are likely to provoke them and 1 thing that doesn't.
Yeah.
Stoking the Flames allows them to basically add to that list, making even more things that could potentially trigger their Gahad, so that when they do give into it, there are more opportunities for them to give into their Gahad and get the bonuses that go along with that.
Exactly.
It does require that the new trigger be related to an existing one or related to some significant event in the orc's life. So you can't just pick something random. It does need to be kind of related to the character's ongoing story.
Yeah.
At rank 3, the Adept gets the ability to enter aggressive stance, aggressive attack without spending strain.
Oh, that's nice.
In conjunction with that, they are surrounded by the impression of heat and may possibly leave like faint scorch marks where appropriate. Let's see. Then we start getting into the higher stuff. At rank 6, they get access to a knack called Slow Burn. Instead of dissipating when the Adept swallows their Gahad, they store that anger for later. Each subsequent time they encounter that source of Gahad, they must make another test. When they unleash it, they gain additional successes on their Fires of Gahad test equal to the number of successes required to swallow their Gahad. So basically it stacks additional successes on top to get those additional +1s. There's an example on how that works. This is kind of a complex knack, but the idea basically being that you endure something longer, and then when you unleash it, you get that much more power.
Fair.
There are a couple of different talents at rank 8. One of them is called Blazing Gahad.
Ooh.
adds their Gahad bonus to a damage test. They use their Gahad to create a flame weapon-like effect that causes additional fire damage on top of their normal damage.
Yeah.
Burning for You is another knack that allows the adept to use their Gahad bonus to fuel their initiative. So it's a bonus to their initiative. They will act faster.
Nice. Clearly,
they have one called Share Gahad. This is also at rank 8. Allows them to touch another name giver and basically instill them with Gahad themselves.
Doesn't matter if they're an orc. Just
they don't actually need to be an orc, but it gives them the ability to experience Gahad the way that an orc does, and they will have their own Gahad triggers that are unique to them based on their own background and experience.
Of course.
They've got...
That just sounds like fun.
Another one that is similar, it's a knack that's available either under Empathic Sense or Fires of Gahad. It allows them to sense what a target name giver is passionate about. Similar to some passion abilities that allow questors to know what people are into then related to their passion. So that's something that's available. It kind of gives the Fire Eater insight into an individual's passions and desires. And then rank 10, I'm always angry. Yeah, the penalty, what this does is that the penalty that is suffered by swallowing your Gahad, because an orc that swallows their Gahad suffers the penalty for being harried, is reduced from a -2 to a -1. So they do not suffer as badly in the event that they are forced to swallow their Gahad and have the negative consequences thereof.
Yeah. Sounds like they get a nice plethora of stuff to play with in this little sandbox.
Yeah. If you really like orcs, and who doesn't? Orcs are great.
Orcs are great.
And you want to explore that and the cool potential that Gahad might allow if you've got a character like Scratch, who is very outgoing and fierce and stereotypically orc. The Fire Eater path has some neat stuff that can supplement your ability and provide you with a whole lot of cool mechanical widgets to play with in relation to your Gahad.
Yeah. I have a friend who plays nothing but orcs, and I cannot imagine the vast majority of his characters, he's got 8 or 9, would not want to be a Fire Eater, including his one that actually wears flaming pants, because he's using the picture that Steve Bryant drew in the Earthdawn Journal number 2. So he's using that one. But yeah, why would you
Fire Eater is great.
I can't imagine why he wouldn't.
Again,
so
much in this, in the Mystic Paths book.
I love this write-up.
Awesome. It's just, it's great. I love it all.
Yes. This is a fantastic write-up.
Yeah.
You don't need more than 5 ranks, which is why this episode's going to be a little bit shorter than most.
You know, we talked about...
You don't need more than 5.
The Woodsman and the development there of how... And I think we talked about this probably in the Brothers of Stone episode as well. How with a path, there's not a need to fill out some kind of like 15 circle requirement and be reaching for stuff that... The point of the Fire Eater is the Fires of Gahad talent and all of the cool stuff that you can do with that. We throw in some extra things that are kind of thematic and maybe useful to a wide variety of disciplines. In, out, it's good, it's done.
Yes.
We don't need to go super hardcore.
Doesn't need to be more than it is.
It's got one thing, and it does that, and boom, there's no need to gate all sorts of stuff or provide all kinds of additional chaff that's not gonna really do much to fulfill the thematic purpose of that path.
Don't need to dilute it after rank 5. After that, it's just throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. No, 5's all you need. It's good. It does what it's supposed to do.
You get access to this cool new talent, which allows you whole access to a bunch of knacks that can be useful in terms of using and fueling your Gahad. And you can pick up a couple of other useful abilities that you might not have access to normally through your discipline that are kind of tied into that. Boom. That's it. You're done. We don't need 10 ranks. What are we going to fill them with? What kind of other stuff?
Well, and a path should not overshadow your regular discipline. That's why the discipline is there first, and a path is something adjacent to it to help you along the way, or side quests, or just
it's an enhancement. It's a role-playing aid. It's some fun new toys, but the idea is to focus them on to provide what they need in order to function and not much more than that. And I think in part the decision about how many ranks a given path has was determined in part by how relatively powerful it is, how many cool new abilities it has or needs to have, and then going, okay, now let's fill in the other stuff. The concept of the Fire Eater is very simple, and there's not a lot of extra stuff that you need in order to do it.
No. It is what it is, and it shouldn't be expanded any further. It's done rather well. Well done, Opti. Well done, team. Like it as it is. There we are. If you have any questions for us about the Fire Eater or anything else we talked about before the Fire Eater, or how to get a hold of the game company and everything they're doing.
Wow.
Name escaped me right this exact second. I know. Brain's done. Late at night. Feel free to email us at edsgpodcast@gmail.com. Any final thoughts, Josh?
Just want to reiterate from the previous episode, we talked about the Actual Play podcast, that miniseries that's being done by the Name Givers folks with the thing that I don't have up in front of me anymore and so am losing track of. Thornvale.
Yes.
The Thornvale podcast folks, check that out. Reminder
it's
that
not just me.
The Foundry virtual tabletop has an Earthdawn character sheet that has been released. The free one allows you to do things just fine by typing it in. If you want to spend the money to get the full compendium that'll bring in all of the player's guide stuff, that's great. That's available at the Facet Games web store.
There you go.
Social media, Discord, blah, de blah, de blah, de blah, de blah. You know all that stuff. They're in the show notes. We don't talk about them often enough, but yeah.
Yeah, if you don't know where to find us, you're not trying hard enough. So until next time, folks, it is time for you to go eat the fire of your own legend.
And good night, everybody.